If I can get everybody their seats, I'm going to get this buildings and ground meeting going.
Open the door.
He's open now.
Keeping it, yeah.
All right, I'd like to call to order the building and grounds meeting for Southwest School District at, I guess it's 6:43, 44. We did have an executive session for discipline reasons. And we have a few visitors. I'll go ahead and Kevin Dickmeyer, Craig Graham, and Jen Crichton. Did I say that right? Crichton. You have better hand. You have good handwriting, so it was my fault. I'd like to go ahead and ask Jeff to go ahead and call roll.
Mrs. Berger, Mrs. Boyer, Mr. Klausby,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella,
Here.
Mr. Mummert,
Here.
Mr. Plessick,
Here.
Mrs. Weaver,
Here.
Mrs. Yingst.
Here.
We did hear from Vanessa
Six
via
presents were
email. She intends to arrive. She is late due to a meeting where she works. So,
Okay.
Rich?
I don't believe anyone's here to address the board at this moment about any of our current issues or agenda items.
Since you're on,
Am I correct?
when he,
So that'll lead us to number 5.
Matt's gonna take that motion.
All right, Matt?
Okay, 5A1 is a recommendation to approve the proposed expulsion agreement in student disciplinary 22-23-16 is discussed.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Roll call. Roll call, Jeff.
Mr. Klausby,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mrs. Rinker, sorry, Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Yingst,
Yes.
Mr. Mummert.
Yes.
6 yes, 0 no. Didn't make that change yet.
All right, thank you. All right, agenda item number 6 is the Southwestern High School renovation. And I'll turn it over to Crabtree Warball.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're here to take you on a walk through the proposed renovations for the high school project. Tonight with me, I have one of my coworkers, Alejandro. Alejandro, he's kind of a young guy with us at the firm. He wanted to come down and kind of see some of his work in action. So what you see here, Alejandro is one of our animation modeling folks who put together kind of the visions that we create and create the walkthrough that you're about to see. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to walk through the building starting from outside the main entrance, and then we'll walk in through the main doors and then sort of find our way around the building through all of the key feature spaces. So we'll walk through the lobby, we'll go into the cafeteria, we'll go through the multipurpose room, into the innovation zone, all these different areas of the plan that we've been talking about as we've been developing the design. I believe we were here last in November, if I'm not mistaken, and then, or it might have been October, but we've presented to you some elevation concepts of the building, what the outside might look like. So this animation will start right outside the main entrance doors, and we're gonna kind of filter in through the front and just kind of walk around the building. What I'll do tonight is I will kind of go through it slowly, and I'll probably stop a couple times, pause, and tell you certain things to pay attention to as we're coming through. And then once we get it all done, I'll just let it run, start to finish, and you'll just be able to kind of experience the whole thing as if you're walking through the building. So with that, can you turn the lights down a little bit? It'll be a little easier to see, I think. Second one down. Okay, so we just okay, so we're gonna come in through the front doors now. And the first thing you'll see is you'll notice the strong red, what we call the red portal as you're coming into the building. We presented the exterior elevation to you back in November. We talked about getting some splashes of red that you have in your logos and things that just try to bring some attention to the entrance. But we're now coming through that main entrance. again, through what we call the red portal. And on the right-hand side of the portal, you start to see some graphics with the 3 charging Mustangs. And then this vestibule is designed to be a secure entrance point. So you start to see now on the right-hand side, you see the check-in stations for the kids. So they come in, they can check themselves in, and then come in through the rest of the building, enter into the secure portions of the building. Here, with this mouse, sorry about that. Okay, so now we're coming into the lobby. And so notice it looks quite a bit different. On the right-hand side, you see the entrance to the gymnasium. Today, and I'm going to kind of pause right there, the entrance to the gym actually is through the side walls, 2 sets of doors here. We're rotating and bringing the entrance in through the right side wall of the building. Now you start to see a lot of glass and openings into the gymnasium. The idea there being that we want it to be prominent when you come into the building and see where you're, instead of walking around the corner to find the doors, we want to be able to see those doors when you come into the building. And make it very prominent within that space. As you're looking down the hallway, this is the existing hallway that goes all the way out toward the loading dock. On the left-hand side would be the kitchen in today's current experience. On the right-hand side of this hallway are the whole series of display cases that come down through the building, through that hallway. What you see in this far distance basically is this is a concession area and then sort of an open area in the front that's kind of an open collaboration space, but it can be dual function and also serve as an eating space during say a basketball game for concessions. It can be set up a number of different ways. You'll see that we've raised the roof in this area of the lobby. We now come through a lower section of the roof. Actually, let me back up there just 1 second. I don't know if you noticed as we came across, we are back up a little bit. We are replicating the compass star in the floor. I know that's very important to a number of people, so it will be put into the building in the same size and same scale as what you currently have. It's not the existing one because there's no way to relocate it, but it is a replica of what is there today. Same size, same scale, same colors. And you come through into the cafeteria, and you'll notice here one primary big thing that you'll notice is we've raised the roof in the cafeteria. What we're doing is building a number of alternates into the design. So the base bid is a concept where we're going to be raising the roof in the cafeteria, and you start to notice that there's some natural light coming in through a series of clear stories around the perimeter. Again, trying to bring in natural light into the core of the building. We're designing the documents so that if we have a budget problem, I don't think we will, but if we have a budget problem, we have options to not raise the roof and bring the roof back down. So you'll have some decisions to make on bid day depending on the bid results that we get. But in this particular concept, we're going basically all in with the base bid and raising the roof and adding natural lighting around the perimeter. So now we're going to walk down through the cafeteria. You'll notice some commonalities with different features in each different area of the building. Again, another splash of red, just trying to add some color and brightness to the space. As we're walking along, you now start to see the food court, modeled very much after the Marple building. You'll see a lot of common colors with the maple fronts and the charcoal walls. That was something that Crystal Goss specifically requested, but we're adding a splash of red to try to add some brightness to it. Looking back out into the main cafeteria, you see a large graphic on the wall with "What's a Mustang? Always a Mustang." You'll notice through the concept of the design, a lot of bold graphics, kind of adds for a lot of interest in the space. We're now going to come out from underneath of the lower ceiling back into the cafeteria, and we're going to enter in what is today, as we go through these doors. These doors don't actually exist today, but this room does. This is actually the current boiler room. So we're repurposing the boiler room to become a multi-purpose room. We're cutting windows in to the wall to the hallway, and we're taking advantage of the clear span of the space and also the high volume of the space to create a very nice multi-purpose space that can be used as a testing center. It can be used for club activities, group activities, after school activities, a whole variety of things. again, bold graphics. Now we're coming into what we call the innovation zone. If you remember, there's a series of classrooms that open up to this, and those classrooms all have garage doors that open up and access this for collaboration of students, collaboration of teachers, and again, high volume space. Put some graphics on the wall, appropriate innovation, design, analyze, research, engineer, just things that are appropriate for the type of space we're talking about. And again, these are simple wallpaper graphics that are very inexpensive. You notice some natural light coming in along the high wall. And again, the garage doors that open up into the backs of the classrooms. Some bold use of color again as we come through. Now we're going to walk back in through the multipurpose room with a large collaboration graphic on the right-hand side. As we come through this door, we're going to come into the first one of the open collaboration spaces. I'm going to pause there for a second. Again, you'll notice some commonalities with the red color and what we call a fold or a compression, where the roof, the ceiling structure as a focus comes across, goes down the wall with marker boards, and then the glass that you see in here is the glass that goes out. We're adding glass to have access to the first, what we call the southeast courtyard. The courtyard is closest to the cafeteria. So we're going to be opening up the wall to allow natural light to come into the space, and also to create an opportunity for outdoor learning for, if there's groups of kids that, that are allowed to eat outside, they can have this as an adjacent fixed space to the cafeteria, as an opportunity for kids to go outside during lunch. And you see the kind of the openness of the space, open to the hallway system, open to the cafeteria. We're going to walk down, actually right there, I'm going to stop. On the right-hand side, these doors, there's two of them side by side. They go into the esports area. So during an esports competition, those doors can be put up, and the actual gathering space to watch the event could be right out here in the main space, because the computer stations and the monitors are on the wall on the opposite wall. So esports becomes a very interactive feature inside the space, and it's prominently located on a corner with a lot of glass going into it to really draw some attention to that interesting feature of the building. So now we're going to come back down toward the lobby. We've got this lower volume ceiling that separates the cafeteria. We're going under it right now. Separates the cafeteria from the main lobby. And that's really designed actually to facilitate with little change the design option to go from a raised ceiling in the cafeteria to a lower ceiling in the cafeteria. If we decide to back that out, it makes that transition very easy. On the left-hand side, as we're walking by, this is the Career Center and guidance. So you'll have an opening into that Career Center. We're heading down the hallway now toward the auditorium lobby. So this is the performing arts area of the building. So we come into this is part of the building addition now. So here we're not raising the roof, we're designing it in a larger volume. A lot of glass going out to the front of the building. If you recall, when I showed you the exterior elevations the last time, we had the large Mustang graphics on the windows. You start to see those in this image. As I get a little further along here, you'll see them a little better. So they're very prominently located on the glass. There's the entrance to the auditorium. We're kind of walking through right now what would have been the existing restrooms. We come into the music area, and we have the new band room. Band room, large windows, a lot of color, high volume for a band room space. Acoustic treatments on the walls. We're going to come down, back out into the hallway, and we're going to turn left and go down toward the orchestra room. You start to see here's the first one of large graphics on the walls, very simple painted graphics. All of your hallways are numbered. So you have the 200 wing, 300 wing, 400 wing, 500 wing. You'll start to see the full use of the graphics now. So the kids, one of the things I noticed walking through the building early on is it's kind of hard to know where you are. The wings all kind of look the same. We wanted to create some wayfinding. So you'll see bold user graphics, in some cases painted on the walls, in some cases applied to the glass in certain areas where we can do that. But again, as you walk through the building, you have a chance to kind of very easily understand where you are. We come down through the hallway. We're going to turn right into the orchestra room. Again, this is new construction now. We get into the orchestra room. Similar to the band room, a lot of high volume space, large windows. And then come back out through the doors of the auditorium. Back out of the orchestra room, rather. And we're going to come down the hallway past kind of the opening into what is the choral room. And then that door you see there is the door that goes into the scene shop. Currently down past that hallway is the current band room that you have today. So we're now coming down around the back of the auditorium. Another bold graphic on the wall from the 400 hallway. On the right-hand side, as we walk down through here, is the auditorium. Here's the doors that come in through the side of the auditorium. On the right-hand side there, that take you to the chairlift. You'll see that we are replacing lockers in this base bid concept, and we're using color for the lockers, a combination of red and light gray, lining the walls with ceramic tile to cover the existing tile. You start to see some of the entrances into the classrooms where you have they're currently green today. We'll be using splashes of color on those door pockets. Again, more graphics for the 400 hallway. Now we're coming into the media center. So we came in under this lower ceiling. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of option there because the existing structure is so low. We came in under this thing and put up into another high volume space. One of the really nice features about this space is we turn around, you'll see with the change in mechanical systems, we're going to a rooftop system instead of a centralized system. So currently all of your rooftop, all of your mechanical equipment is located up on a mezzanine up here high that you get to from the back behind the sound booth. By eliminating all of that, we have the opportunity to actually open that portion of the building up and cut some windows in through the outside wall and get some natural light into the media center. It's going to dramatically change the feel of that space. So at night, you see this openness to the media center. There will be roll down doors that come down, a coiling grill to secure the media center at night. But during the day, of course, it's open to encourage people to come in and easily enter into the media center. And we'll now turn down the hallway. Some of the hallways get a little long. Not a lot going on other than door pockets. And you'll see again on the left-hand side, you see how we're adding color to the door pockets. Color to the lockers. We're heading down now to another one of the open collaboration spaces on the left-hand side. Similar to the last one with the red fold. And on the right-hand side, that's actually a teacher planning station with a lot of glass between the teacher planning station and the collaboration area for observation and monitoring. But then again, a bold use of graphics. This is 500 wings, so here we're applying graphics to the actual glass. We're coming down the hallway now toward what is today the PAC. As you know, we're opening that area up and we are removing the elevated floor out of it and coming in to that space again, a small SGI type space between here. It's the restroom on the left. Come around the corner. There's the rear entrance from the back parking lot. Then we're opening up the wall with glass to come into what is now an LGI or a large group instruction room. We're cutting some windows in the back wall. This is where the elevated steps are, the elevated platforms coming into the Performing Arts Center. Added some windows there. And we're gonna spin around here, and I'm gonna pause kind of right about here. This is the Mustang stained glass that is currently over your main entrance. When you walk in the front doors, you have the Mustang entrance. We're gonna be adding that between that open collaboration space that you saw coming down the hallway. That's kind of an internal light window, just to allow some, so that, I believe that was a student gift, if I'm not mistaken, or a class gift. So we're gonna be using that in a prominent place, inside the LGI. So that said, that is kind of the end of the tour. Before I proceed, are there any questions anyone has? What I'll do is I can kind of run through it again without stopping and starting, and you can just sort of experience the whole thing as you come through the building. Are there any questions before I would run it again?
While I get raising the ceilings, I'm adding the glass to make it feel more open and inviting. With that always comes the counter cost of how long it takes to raise the room up to temperature, as well as the cost HVAC with those windows. It's going to heat up the room to control that, like I mentioned before.
Sure.
We added a lot. We added a lot of glass. So have we looked at the cost that it's going to take HVAC for all that glass addition?
We do energy modeling to make sure that we're not creating issues for you from an operational perspective. There are lots and lots of studies out there that talk about the benefits of natural light in the learning environment. And I'm a strong believer that natural light into these spaces is a really important feature. All the glass that you see though is all high performance glass. It's low emissivity. So there's coatings on the glass to keep the heat out, basically to reflect the heat back and not come into the building. So there are a lot of features that it doesn't really show in these renderings, but it's all high performance glass. It's called Summer Band 70. So it's pretty powerful stuff. Yes.
And so that glass addition to our instrument and our musical rooms, while it's good in our cafeterias and our hallways to add light, sometimes which direction does it face? Are they going to get direct sunlight into the room, which is going to blind our musicians, or is there window coverings included? Or?
Yes, all of those exterior windows will have blinds on them, and they'll be. We haven't gotten into the exact discussion yet, but I know what we normally do. There are a whole variety of different filtration levels of the blinds, and we typically will pick a filtration level depending on the orientation of the building. So it's like a perforated charcoal gray cover. They'll come down. They're all motorized, so they come down and they end up basically. If you're getting too much light, you can bring them down depending on the power of the light. We do studies on which is the appropriate level of filtration through the line. We don't want to block the light, entirely,
right.
But some windows that are facing, let's say, south, are going to have a heavier,
Right.
Heavier matrix to the back. Ones that are facing north, maybe not so much because you're not getting that direct sunlight.
But as far as these large windows, if we're placing a huge window covering on it, is that a much higher cost than a regular size window? I mean, because we're custom blinding basically these huge windows.
I would say, it's hard to say for sure, but yes, there's certainly a cost associated with larger windows and blinds and those things. And it's certainly, that's kind of hard to deny. Okay, I will say that most of the schools that we do, this is very consistent with
Okay.
Our typical approach to schools. What's interesting about this particular school, the comment that I would kind of expect somebody might make, okay, and I'm not saying in this particular board, but when people see these walkthroughs, they go, "Oh, that looks really great, but it looks really expensive." There's a lot going on with this building for sure, and we are raising roofs and those kind of things. But what you'll really notice if you actually look, like you see, for example, in this particular picture, okay, these ceiling treatments up here are actually no different than what you have right here. This is simple ceiling grid, but it's done in planes instead of just going wall to wall. So what we're doing here is we're kind of using basic materials, let's say, to get a lot of impact in what we're doing. So what you're seeing looks more expensive than it actually is. It's kind of hard to say, but doing the ceiling cloud treatment is really no different than what you have right here, but instead of going wall to wall, it's just in sections.
I just wanted to address it too, of the air exchange, if
Sure.
the difference in cost and time it would take to bring a room up or down to temperature, and the difference in price for windows and treatments versus, and the impact it has on our heating, practically speaking,
Sure.
as consideration for possible, option.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we do energy models, and I'm not sure if our engineers have gotten quite that far yet, but they will
Okay.
be doing that, and they'll calculate, annual energy,
Okay.
estimates, and then you can compare those to what, Maine is currently spending on these different buildings.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you rewind back to the first, I'm gonna say wrong, but it was the collaborative space in which you had the garage door set up coming from the back class?
The innovation zone. Okay.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can- Not sure exactly where in the video that is.
I wanna say it was like the first
It was
maybe
pretty early.
4 minutes?
Yeah, it was definitely pretty early. Where the music area.
No, yeah, I was waiting for this.
Yeah, so now they pull that. Right about here. Okay, yeah.
So, administration, what is?
You want me to
what-
run it or do you want me to just stop?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
What are the classrooms that this is a center space for?
Yeah, that's gonna be art.
Can you go back to the cafeteria if you don't mind, please?
Sure, absolutely.
And while you're doing that, Alejandro, nice work, and if this is the new trend in architecture to make it more visible for people, it's very helpful. No, the question's going to relate to the ceiling treatments throughout the entire building. You have drop ceiling with exposed behind it, and you have exposed beams. Those beams, how are they treated for fire? Yeah, what is the rating for those? Because those trusses under a fire load will be the first thing to fail.
You would have to almost look at the floor plan to understand how all that works, okay? But they're not required to be fire rated. Okay, we've got a fully sprinklered building, which currently you're not fully sprinklered. So there are things in the building that are designed to create the safety and safety risk out of the building. The height of the volume of the space creates a kind of an inherent safety, number one, but with the sprinkler system and the fire alarm systems for early detection, we're not required to fire rate that steel. There are also fire walls, actual true fire walls that separate all of our new additions from the existing buildings, separate that innovation zone we just talked about from the existing building. And those fire walls by code have to have independent structure on both sides. If
Right.
something happen on one side, it doesn't tear the wall down and jeopardize, people on the other side.
What have you found with those drop section ceilings in terms of those open voids up there, in terms of retaining heat and the rise of the heat to there, as well as sound?
Sound wise, I don't have a concern with them. We've got on our team, we've engaged an acoustic consultant who is doing reverberation studies, and we just had a conversation a couple days ago. In fact, Mr. Osborne was on that call with us, where we're doing a whole series of sound studies to make sure we don't have a lot of issues and we're deadening that sound, okay? As far as heat, the roof today in the code, it requires a minimum of R30.
R30.
So we've got a heavily insulated roof compared to what you currently have today. Have you gotten all the results? I know you sent me some information, but most of those areas have probably 2 inches of insulation.
Well, some areas have 2, a lot of areas have probably 3.
But we did a series of cuts of the existing roof in all generations of the building to try to understand how much insulation is there versus what we're doing with our new insulation. And by code today, the R30 really relates to 5.2 inches of insulation. So you're going from 2 inches to 5.2, and it's actually it's a more thermally efficient insulation than what you had when this was originally installed 30 years ago. So we are creating a pretty thermally efficient building.
Can you go back to the music suite, please? And what I was interested in is you had the designated band room, you had a designated orchestra room, and then you went to the choral. Is the choral an open space area? Or was there a designated room for choral also?
There is a designated room for choral. It is currently today the band, is that correct, Mr. Crawford? It's currently today the band room. We've got 2 side-by-side rooms. The choral room is currently the band room. What is currently the choral room with the risers in it
Yes.
actually becomes the scene shop. And then we're building new construction, a new orchestra room and a new band room.
Okay.
So this is the band room. This is new construction.
Okay.
Not renovation construction.
Can you go to that open area after the 2 rooms here, please?
Are you saying scene shop?
Scene shop. For building scenery for the stage.
Oh,
So all it is just, it's an open room with 2 big doors in it, so you can roll something large from the room into the back of the stage. It's kind of just a glorified big room.
I'm interested in that open area with the exterior roll-up door
Okay.
after this room.
Well, that wasn't an exterior door, that's an internal door.
That's an internal. Oh, okay.
We're talking about right
This
here.
space in here, what exactly
That's
is,
actually an internal.
okay,
That is going into the scene shop.
okay.
So behind that is what is currently today the choral.
So what is that open space, that large area there?
This space?
Yes.
Really, it's more just kind of a gathering space. I mean, it's a lot of space, but there's so many doors coming into it that you need to have to be able to have the flow. So you have this big door, you got this door, you got this door, and you've got doors all around this, that it's kind of hard to close it in anything. So I would envision it being furnished with some flexible furnishing where the music students can come out. And,
Okay.
you know, it's kind of like not really a collaboration space. It's not a teaching zone with marker boards and those kind of things, but it is a place where kids can get together and gather and talk about the performance or, the spring musical or whatever. But, if you're familiar with the choral room, this window right here is an existing window. This comes out of, there's an office right here, actually. This is the office, the music office that looks into the choral room.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
So what's beyond this door is currently the choral room, not the exterior.
And then do you have any detail on the administrative offices and the health rooms in this?
I don't have it in this rendering, but
Okay.
we obviously have it all designed.
Okay. I just meant in this rendering.
No, it's not in this.
Okay,
rendering.
thank you.
Now, this is more.
On those music rooms, I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm assuming that you're doing sound studies and things with regards to the need for acoustical tiling, ceilings, and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, our acoustic consultant that we've engaged, he's doing all of the music spaces, so.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question here. Very impressive with the rendering and the concept schedule. When are we looking to go out to bid for this?
We are right now, our target date is May 8th for release for bid. We're trying to improve upon that. I told Mr. Osborne that I do truly believe that's the amount of time we need. But as we start getting through more and more into the detailing of the building, we're fully into construction documents at this point. I said I would monitor it and continue to see if we can improve upon that date. The schedule we've laid out basically has phase one completing on the same schedule that phase one was completing on originally, and phases 2 and 3 are unaffected from start to finish. Essentially, with this new schedule, it does get us going about 3.5 weeks later than we had originally planned. But there really was more time. It's kind of a complicated situation, but there was more time between when bids were due originally and when construction started, that we actually were able to pick up some of that time and basically, in the construction start date, it's about 3.5 weeks after when it was originally scheduled to start.
Okay. Have you consulted any contractors during this process?
I have actually, the contractor for this building for Markle.
Okay.
I've talked to a lot, we have a very close relationship with them because they are kind of the big elephant in the construction market for schools. So we talked to them a lot. And I had a very lengthy discussion, talked about timing of bids. What does that mean to the potential for impact of cost? What does that mean to the schedule? We went through our phasing plan. I'll be honest with you, what he said to me is, I'm worried too much. So, he wasn't totally concerned. He felt
Okay.
it was very appropriate and reasonable for what we're trying to do. He looked at my budget and looked at our phasing plan, and he felt like our budget was appropriate, and told me to stop sweating.
Okay,
But
good.
I'm a natural sweater, so some of those bids come in.
Thank you.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, that does bother me a little bit, being that you're saying 3 or 4 weeks behind our initial target date for going out for bids. And and maybe the guy knows what he's talking about, but that puts me ill at ease with regards to being able to get out there early enough to get and secure good dollar values for the project. Now, I'm a little disappointed that we're not going to be going out there at least a month earlier than what you're talking about now. So what's the suggestion or how are we getting back closer to our original target?
We talked a lot about that, and we talked about impact to, what it could mean to the bids and what it could mean to the overall construction schedule. And I certainly understand your desire to want to be out early and to try to, secure those best bids, okay? I'm not sure that even on the original schedule, that would have worked. I mean, the projects, to be honest with you, that are out of the gate first, let's say, okay, just put it that term,
Mhm.
are out in October and November, building that schedule for, for the coming year, okay? Being out in March versus being out in May, it's kind of not that much, there really isn't that much of an impact to it. When I talked to Lobar about this, I said, look, give me the answer that you honestly feel is the answer, not the answer you think I want to hear.
Mhm,
And I
right.
want to know truly, what am I doing by making this extension? And he said, honestly, there was a time, and again, this is coming from him now, okay? He said, there was a time where the perception was you get out in March and people are building their calendars and, and that's a good thing for bids. But we're in a very different world right now with all the post-COVID and all of the, all of the lead times and all of the things that are affecting construction today. He actually said he thinks that this is a better time, more opportune time, because we're starting to see a settling of some of these things. What used to take like roof insulation a year ago, I mean, roof insulation was delaying projects for 9 months because you couldn't get it. And I talked to a roofer recently, and he said, "Tell me how much insulation you need, I'll have it on your site in 5 weeks." He says things like that are actually benefiting the construction schedule, and we're starting to see some settling of some costs that he didn't think we would see any impact at all in shifting the schedule from a cost perspective. He said it actually might even be advantageous. Now, I know, Mr. Plessis, I think you're an estimator. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that? I don't want to sugarcoat it, but we do a lot of research in this and talk to a lot of contractors, and that's kind of the assessment that we're getting.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. It's a lot what you had said there about based on manpower and schedules, right? I mean, so if, everybody's looking to sort of fill up that schedule, and once it's at least partially filled, things start to not become, as necessary. So that's where trying to get out there ahead, you get to be the project that sort of gets the flashlight shined on it, and because you're there, you're ahead of the rest in a way. That doesn't mean that things will be higher down the road, but there's less people looking at things in July.
I knew this conversation was going to come up tonight, so I've done a lot of research into how I would answer the question, because I kind of suspected it would come up. When you're talking a project of this scope and scale, okay, you're attracting a level of bidder. Now I'm talking prime bidders, not subs, okay? You're attracting a level of prime bidder like the Lobars of the world, the ECIs of the world, people who this is their bread and butter to be doing big school projects. And you are definitely in the big school project category, okay? When you have two big heavy hitters like ECI and Lobar who are going to be duking it out for this work, for this project, the subcontractors that bid to them, and I absolutely do not disagree with what you're saying. Okay, you're 100% correct. But when you have the two big gorillas in the school market who are in the same town and are duking it out for these big appealing projects, the subcontractor pool, they know who butters their bread. Okay, they know if they stay in their good graces, they've got lots of work coming down the pipe. They start playing games with numbers, and I'm sure a lot of experience in this, but you're very fortunate in the sense that you've got a large project and it's going to be very appealing to the bidding pool. I don't really foresee a huge impact to a project of this scale. Now, if this was a $5 million project, I might definitely agree with you. But in a project of this scale and scope, I don't think you've got a lot to worry about in terms of impact to your budgets by not getting good sub-pricing.
The other part of my concern to this would have been not so much the price, but being able to secure qualified, certified, whatever, however you want to call it, the contractors, making sure that we're getting the best ones we can for the job. And not get a hold of somebody that's not gonna do a respectable job for us.
Again, I will have thought about that question, but I can tell you the work that we as Crabtree Floorball do, we also, because we are, again, it's a big fish in the pond, okay? We're doing a lot of schoolwork, okay? The contractors in all of the prime arenas, okay, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, general construction, we knew who those big people are, and we know the ones that are gonna likely be attracted to this project, and we're talking to them regularly. They bid our work all the time, and I've already been getting the word out that this thing is coming, and they know it, and people are saying to us, in fact, Lobar, another conversation with Lobar, Lobar said to me, "Are you guys busy? What are you guys doing 6 months from now?" I'm like, "Well, we got enough work for about 18 months." He said, "You're the only ones." He said, "I'm just telling you, a year ago, we were begging people to bid projects. Now, people are calling us saying, 'Hey, what do you have coming up in June? What do you have coming up in July?' We don't know what's gonna be out there." They're saying that we're the only ones that are busy. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the feedback we're getting from the big prime bidders. But I have no doubt people like J.R. Reynolds are gonna bid this project. And McCarty and Son are gonna bid this project. Pagoda's gonna bid this project. North Bay is gonna bid this project. These are all big players in the school market, and they're gonna bid the project. I can pretty much assure you of that. And if they're not getting the documents, I can tell you I will be on the phone calling every one of them saying, "Hey, we need you to take a look at this project." And it's in their wheelhouse in every one of those guys.
Okay, okay.
So I'm not trying to,
No, I understand
say
where,
something I don't
yeah.
really believe.
no, I understand where you're coming from. It's just a little disappointing in that, back in November, we were on target for an early bid release, and now we're not in there at that ballpark anymore, and that's disturbing to me.
And I get that, and I certainly don't want to make light of, disappointment. I mean, I clearly see you're disappointed, okay? I can tell you, I've been doing this for 35 years, and a bigger impact to your budget and to your schedule is having drawings that are not correct and properly coordinated.
Understood.
You'll have a bigger impact in that than you will in a little more time. And really, my chief goal of this project is to give you my absolute best. I mean, Mr. Osborne and I would talk every day, if not multiple times a day. And, I'm calling down here saying, "Hey, what do we do about this and this? What do you think? Hey, can you run across the street to go measure something for me?" I mean, this building was built in 5 eras, different editions of this building. And I can tell you that, I don't think I really grasped what that meant at the very beginning of this project. We start getting deep in everything, and every corner we turn, we go, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" But we were over measuring doors today, and in the same room, some doors are 7 foot, some are 7'2". I mean, they're all different sizes, and we have to go and verify all that. It just takes time.
Sure.
We don't want to give you something that isn't my absolute best and our absolute best. It just takes time to do that.
Well, I understood, and I do have faith in your company. I mean,
Sure.
I've been on the board for 24 years, so I've been through a few of your projects that you've done for us and the support you've given to us. And that's where it's coming back to me and saying, what happened here all of a sudden that we're missing our goal? So,
Being completely honest with you, I don't think, and I've been involved, as you know, from the very beginning, I don't think and I've done some really large projects, okay? I don't think I had a grasp on how complicated this existing building was. And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable with that statement, because that's what we do. Okay, we're very good at it.
I understand.
There's a lot more going on with this building than I think I anticipated from the beginning. But again, we're digging in. That's what we do. We're looking at every corner. We're lifting ceiling tiles. We're looking behind walls. We're doing everything we can to try to give you, again, our absolute best.
Oh, I trust you're doing that, so I trust that you're doing the best you can, so
Yeah. But
2 or 3 days earlier would be great.
and I've told Mr. Osborne that we're definitely monitoring the schedule, and if we can pick up time on that, one of the fortunate things about your board schedule is that the way your June board meetings work, between your work session or your facilities meeting and your board meeting, it actually works really well to our favor to be able to advance the schedule once the bids come in. And one of the things that we've been doing recently with our clients, because what we're seeing, really honestly, is the prime contractors who are bidding all projects, okay? They're getting feedback from their subs saying, hey, my price is good for 7 days. And after that, we've got escalation, we've got this, we've got that. Well, you can't argue that if the bids are due on X day and we say, we're gonna review the bids on C day, okay? The bidder clearly has to hold their bid that long, okay? And if they have to build escalation in, then it's up to them. They have the opportunity to do that. We've been issuing what we call administrative notice to proceed, which basically is as soon as you as a board say, yep, we're on board, this is great, we like the bids, we're gonna proceed. Before we actually get all the paperwork for contracts, all the stuff in place, we're telling the contractors, you are now authorized to award, meaning the board's already signed off, you can lock your subs in, so we don't lose that 7-day window, as opposed to taking 2 or 3 weeks to get contracts in place, then the subs start complaining, and, you know,
Right.
we're doing this administrative notice to proceed as a way to overcome some of these challenges with bids, you know, bidders
Mhm.
not holding their numbers for more than 7 days.
Okay, all right,
So,
thank you. Thank
A
you.
lot of research goes into all of these different aspects.
Oh, yeah.
They're excellent questions.
I understand. Like I said, I've been through several of the projects with you guys and I know you're doing the best job that you can in the environment. So that's just push them a little harder.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. And we are, you know, like Nate was he's in our office every 2 weeks, every other Tuesday. And I said, Nate, it's not a manpower thing. I can assure you, I can walk through this computer or through our studio and you'll see your building on 8 different screens, which we never put people on a project, okay? But we are like absolute full court press, but it's, you turn a corner and you find something and you go, oh, I gotta call a structural engineer and this, okay, we'll kind of get it ducked onto that beam. And before you know it, you have 7 calls and to solve one problem and it's a half a day.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
there's just a lot going on.
Right.
So
Okay,
anyway,
all right, thank you.
if you want, I mean, I've been kind of talking a long time and I don't need to take up your whole evening, but I can run back and kind of just run through the whole video if you want, or if you've seen enough, that's fine too.
I've seen enough. I'd rather ask a few more questions
Yeah,
if you all don't
I
mind.
don't think we need to actually see the video again.
It was very nice though.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, it
excellent.
was excellent presentation. Alejandro, great job. Great job.
Kind of creating the 3D
Yeah.
images of,
Very nice. So,
absolutely, it's actually downloaded to the system here, so we'll have it, yeah.
Is there an intention to upload this anywhere for people to watch, the public to watch? Okay.
Yeah.
I know, only because I know there are people watching right now that were not able to see it because of the room being dark. So the screen just looks like a giant white orb, unfortunately.
Yeah, we
Even-
can, I'm sure we can get
Yeah,
some.
even if we just screen record and put it on YouTube on our channel, that would be an easy way to do it, I would
Only
think.
because you've
Put
put
it-
so much time and effort into it, and it's really quite lovely,
Yeah.
so I would not want
If you
people to
want
miss out on that.
Put it-
Like this file is 1.5 gigabytes. It's a
Ooh.
large file.
Right.
Okay,
oh yeah,
so-
drop that
so
on our
if you want
website
a
would be.
smaller version of it, we can do a shorter walk, that's like 8 minutes long, so we can do a shorter version and maybe hit
Well,
cafeteria.
I would suggest if we just screen record, we have a YouTube channel and that would shrink it down to nothing and it would just be a straight run video we could put on our YouTube channel.
However you want to do it, we can certainly.
Work that out with the IT guys.
Yeah, we'll get it up.
Thank you.
Yes.
Not to stay on the delay situation, you alluded to the insulation issue may be beneficial to us in terms of the delay, that things are coming down. What are you hearing about the steel? Because that has been such a major issue, and if we're raising the roof and we're dealing with all these trusses, what are you hearing on the supply issue as it relates to that?
Steel is not the issue it was 18 months ago, okay? It wasn't so much steel, it's more bar joists, okay? Which is obviously made of steel, okay? But bar joist manufacturers have really ramped up their game because they know everything was in demand. And it's not, you're not gonna get it in 5 weeks, but you're not gonna wait 9 months for it either. You're gonna probably get bar joists in, 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks maybe, I don't know what you're seeing. But again, those hot ticket items, we monitor very closely. In fact, we went through a period about 18 months ago where we weren't even using just trees and steel beams, which normally are more expensive, but because you could get them, they were cheaper. So, we're keeping our finger on that pulse at all times.
The issue worry you at this point? Mechanical or otherwise?
Right now, the things that we're seeing the biggest impact to are definitely the mechanical side, top units, switch gear. But even that's starting to settle out a little bit, but switch gear is probably the biggest concern we have. We were hearing couple months ago, switchgear could be out 15 months, which is a long, long lead time. That's gotten better, but I'm not gonna kid you, it's definitely gonna be out there probably 10 months. Our plan for that very issue, because we're actually building in our first phase 1 addition to be mechanical on that electrical room. Well, we need switchgear in order to make that work. We are planning right now in our engineering documents to backfeed off the existing switchgear that we can continue to proceed with construction and make the changeover of the phases, even if the switchgear is not here. When it comes here, we install it and then we just do a changeover. We're gonna probably backfeed the existing gear just to not affect the schedule.
Good.
So,
Good.
yeah. Can only do so much with lead times, but I do feel like we have plans in place for the things that we are experiencing. So,
I just want to make sure I understand what you've told us. I'd like to regurgitate it so I get corrected if I draw the wrong inference. So basically what I'm hearing is the bidders were bidding to big companies. And because the supply prices went up, the bids that have been out there has kind of shrunk the contractor hiring. So they're still as eager as they were before because now the supply prices are coming down and the demand is coming back up. We don't have as much of a worry as we're gonna miss early bids. Am I getting that?
more or less, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think the big thing you have going for you on this project is just its sheer size.
Okay.
You're gonna attract like the premium bidders, okay? You're gonna get people
Right.
interested in this project that are, you know, are very good at what they do. And they focus on the score. With the statement I made about things settling out, you know, with time, I don't think, like, for example, roofing.
Mhm.
Years ago, roofing was $15 a square foot.
Right, and that's the advantage to waiting is the prices are still coming back down. So the advantage to this short wait is the prices are still coming down. So we might actually incur some cost savings by that coming down.
6 months ago, roofing was $32.
Right.
I just talked to Carlisle a couple days ago because I was actually talking to Mr. Osborne about the specs and how we're gonna rate the specs. And I said, look, tell me, you know, what can I expect from roofing today? And they're telling me like 25 to 26. So it's already come from
Right.
32 down to 25, 26. Is it gonna get to 15? No, I think we're not ever gonna see 15. But is it gonna settle in at maybe 22?
Right.
Time, I think it will. The more time we give it, I think those prices are starting to settle out. And it's all supply and demand. is what it is.
And one follow-up, and then I'll stop asking questions so we're not here till 11. If we opt to bring the ceilings back down, can we still have those upper level windows at a lower level, or is that's what we gained by coming up? Okay, that's what I thought. Right, that's what I thought. Okay.
Raising it allows you to have that
Okay,
differential to the light.
understood.
Yeah.
Okay,
Unfortunately, no.
okay,
So, but we have the building designed in a way with that low ceiling to allow that to happen. We've got about $1.5 million of alternates built into this design so that we could, you know, if we have a budget problem, again, I don't think we're going to, but if we have a budget problem, then we've got a fallback plan that'll get you to an awardable project.
okay. Thank you, sir. And again, I appreciate the display. It was really nice to be able to see a walkthrough to understand so thank you for your work,
Yeah, it's a
both
lot
of you.
easier to show you that than it is to
Right.
say, "Hey, we're gonna raise the roof in this area."
Right.
Oh, that-
Thank you. All right, I guess we're gonna turn this over to Nate for, number 7.
So I'll start out with visitor bleacher updates. I shared with the board at the last meeting that I was engaging with the president of the company, trying to cut to the chase and get things worked out. I'm happy to report, I think we did come up with a good compromise. The president of the company came out. We looked at what we have on site, trying to work within the parameters that we have. They've come back with a new proposal for us. Actually at $285,750, which is cheaper than the last original proposal we were trying to go on. The compromise is instead of a 10-row bleacher set, we're dropping back to an 8-row. We're giving up about 250 seats off of a 1,250 seat bleacher set. What makes that work better is that with the ADA codes, the front raised aisleway has to be wider. It cuts into our bleachers. So to keep the 10-row bleacher, we ended up having to extend those footing pads, extend the slabs, extend the groundwork. So as we stood there and looked at it, and we pulled the measurements and looked at what we had, we came upon the idea, hey, how about we drop this back to 8 rows instead of 10? Most home football games, most activities in the stadium do not fill up the visitor bleachers. We'd still be at 80% of what we have now. And then that allows us to work with the footings and the site that we have now and not get into stormwater management implications. We have site constraints as far as there's a pretty good ravine that's right off the back side of that. When we start trying to extend another 4 feet back, we run into that right away. So I think this is a good route for us to address these visitor bleachers. If capacity does end up being an issue, I think some of you'll probably remember we had a portable set of bleachers on the home side that we placed beside the press box. And I would propose that if we end up where we have large band competitions or additional need for capacity in the stadium, that'd be a very quick, easy way to remedy that situation. If we felt like we needed to expand capacity, we could put those portable bleachers at those locations once again. In my mind, I'd be kind of surprised to actually see that need come to fruition at this point in time. But we would have that flexibility in the future.
What was that, the capacity for the 8 rows?
8 rows drops us back to 1,075, not counting the handicap seats.
Okay.
What's the schedule looking like for them?
So what they're telling me is, things are starting to queue up pretty good for summer. If we jump on it now, take action here in the next few weeks, they would start the drawings, get the approval process done, and we would probably be on schedule for about a mid-July.
Okay, sounds good.
And it would bring us completely up to code, which we're not now. I mean,
Correct.
We don't have any handicap accessible spaces.
We have handicap accessible. The issues that we have now is that the current handicap code, the aisleway needs to be wider.
Okay,
And there needs to be handrails as you go up the aisles in the bleachers. So if
Okay.
you're not in a wheelchair, but you have whatever, you have a cast on your foot or you use crutches, there needs to be a handrail to help steady you. Or you're an 85-year-old and you want a handrail.
Right.
We don't have those handrails now. And then one of the hardest things for us to meet is that the new code states it can't be bigger than a 4-inch hole anywhere. They tested by taking a 4-inch ball, and if it passes through a crack anywhere, that's a violation. Old standard used to be 6 inches. So when they changed that in the 90s and dropped back to 4 inches, it made a lot of stuff like this no longer 100% compliant.
With the temporary bleachers, does that, I imagine they're probably not ADA compliant, but because we're providing it somewhere else, then that still keeps us in code? Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Correct.
And lead time to deploy those, I guess we get a lead on how many visitors we're going to get, so we can say, let's put them up or let's not? Or how would that go?
Well, I would think that it
You'll know by the number of bands. that are
Bands.
competing
Okay,
Particularly in that
for
case,
that
yeah.
race.
okay.
and that's primarily probably our biggest capacity constraint, need is when we have band competitions. You have
Okay.
multiple big bands come into site, plus all their parents and spectators. So, some of our bleachers we do have here on campus are portable bleachers. So if we have a big day like that playing, Bill Kirsch calls me up and says, hey, we have band competition. I'm reminding you, next Saturday, we can have that conversation, say, well, do we really need to pull a set off the dual turf field across the street and install it quick? And we can have that conversation.
Great, you came up with this alternative.
You have to get board approval to move forward with the thing.
So this is the same company. It was already basically approved as a 10-row bleacher set until we had all the implications with the site. So I don't know if we need new board approval for this new 8-row section or since it falls less than that original budget, we're good to proceed. However, the board wants to handle that.
I think it's a different contract. I think you should have board approval.
I agree. Yeah.
Can
So-
we put it on for Wednesday?
Put it,
Yeah.
you can put it on the agenda for Wednesday.
Very good.
That works for me. You have to give me first 285,750, something like that.
Correct. That's right. 7B, the scoreboard update. We ready?
Matt, just how much of a difference was the dollar between what it was and what we're down to now?
So it was like 298 and change, so it's about
298.3.
25,000 better.
Okay, go ahead.
285, 15,000.
Was it 285, 275? 285, I was thinking 275, sorry, 15. Okay.
Closer about 12, 13.
I was going from 300 to 275, sorry.
That's your numbers guy.
Not when you get that big, what's $1,000 there? There. Scoreboard. So we've pursued a couple different angles. We have Kevin Dickmeyer here this evening. He really helped a lot in trying to drive community support toward scoreboard for the stadium. Appreciate the time and effort he's put into that. At the end of the day, the original proposed scoreboard that, kind of we're shooting for, the high goal, had a price tag of about $75,000. Couple that $20,000 that we've budgeted with the money that Kevin was able to solicit, we were still pretty far apart. Probably be about half of what the Daktronics Strickler proposal was. So we started looking around, trying to figure out what a good alternate plan B is. So Varsity Scoreboards is a scoreboard outfit in Kentucky that we as a district have purchased from in the past. They have good reputable name, good solid scoreboards. So what I price from Varsity Scoreboards is a board that's slightly bigger than what we have now, with the arch top that we were seeing on the fancy Daktronics Southwestern motifs on the top, Mustangs, wireless remote control. They would build that and deliver it to the district for $18,000. And as long as we order a board that is close to the size that we have now, our own staff is capable and has done it in the past, remove the old board and hang a new board. So it cuts out on all that outside labor. What I'm seeing numbers as we compare 2 or 3 different options, the labor to put in new bases, extended higher bases at a different location in the stadium to support a bigger board, basically doubles the price of the board. So if you have $25,000 in the board, you end up at least another $25,000 in structural engineering and installation. Once we start getting to the point where we have to move it to another location, I propose that's beyond our staff's scope and capabilities. I think we need to farm it out. So what I'm kind of taking a long way around about is we stay with a board that is close to the size that we have now, has some nice attributes, some nice frills to it, for lack of a better word, but keep it close to the size we have now. We can hang it on the structure we have now, do it with our own staff for less than 20. If we decide we want to go higher, go bigger, we can't hardly do that in increment without doubling the cost. We go from 25 to 50 just like that. In the case of Stricklers, it was a bigger board, it had backlighting. There was definitely some more bells and whistles involved, pushed it up that $75,000 mark. So what I'm laying in front of the board is basically probably 3 options. Option 1 is stay with the board. It's close to the size we have. It has that architectural arch truss at the top. It has the running Mustangs. We can fine tune it and design that. It is an LED board. It has wireless control. It's a nice board, not drastically bigger than what we have, but it presents well. We can do that for $20,000 or less. If we want to do the same board to the right of the restroom, raise it up higher so it's a little better visibility, gives us the flexibility in the future to add a digital display board directly below it because we build a bigger structure. I think our starting point is at least $25,000 more, takes us up to $45,000, $50,000. And if we go to the extent of going to a wider board, bigger board with all those attributes, and the provisions to be able to add a digital display. Of course, we got the Strickler price at 75. So I really need direction from the board as far as their comfort level, as far as where we want to take this board to.
Is the
Or-
the 75 doesn't include the structure?
75
it's
does
75
include the
plus-
structure. No, 75 does include the structure.
Oh, it does, okay.
Mr. Dickmeyer, since you've been involved in this process in terms of raising funds and there's expectations out in the community as relating to those funds, what are your feelings on the three options?
So, putting a lot of thought into it, the original Strickler design, and we had that up last time, I still have that on. That looks something like that. Yeah. Okay. And it's awesome. Looking at the varsity boards that they showed me last week, I think you can get something very similar to that for less than the 75. At the end of the day, I think we should take a look at the possibility of that. My feeling is, when I look from the stands down into that area, you have that walking area in front of the concession stand that is congested because of the scoreboard sitting there. By moving this back onto the grassy area, you can bring that fence around there, blacktop that area and open that up. If you move it back, you're going back 20 or 30 feet. It should be a larger scoreboard if you do that. Just personally feeling from sitting in the stands, looking down at back, driving in the night, I looked at that and I'm like, yeah, if you go right there, a 20-footer would probably be pretty good, but if we go back in the grass field, try to get to 25. And we'd have to go back and take a look at pricing at the varsity scoreboard. The biggest dilemma really is the engineering to put that up. So ultimately, I'd love to see us go back in that grassy area and put a bigger scoreboard up. I raised 15,000. That's nowhere near what I thought. It's much harder when I got in the community to get people without any opportunity to advertise to want to donate towards something like this. To get some folks to do that. I did bring with me tonight the Booster Club president, Craig Graham. They had a meeting, emergency meeting this weekend to discuss this entire situation, and I believe Craig can speak on behalf of the Booster Club. They would possibly be interested in contributing towards the scoreboard if we look to do something bigger than that.
The 15,000 that you've raised already, what are the expectations of those donors in terms of a board?
So 5,000 of that was mine. So honestly, if you put up the little scoreboard, you can use that to improve the block building or the concrete. There's lots of things down there that really could use some improvements. It's getting very antiquated look over there. So 5,000 isn't going to go far. The other 10,000 from another community member, I would have to go back and ask him. He has not, as far as I know, this moment he is not.
I've never seen
You
anything.
haven't seen it from anyone else, okay? So, and he gave a pledge for 10,000 towards a scoreboard. I'd have to ask him if he put that towards anything else or not. My guess is he probably say, okay, that's okay, then thanks. But I don't know that.
Nate,
That was very specific.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
The moving of the scoreboard, that was option 2, correct? So that would have put us into the 4550?
As a minimum, correct. That would be appropriately the same size board as we have now. A new location raised up higher, that is structured to be able to support a digital display board at a later date. So what we have up on the screen now is the varsity sports proposal for a board of similar size as what we have now. This is the board that comes in at less than $20,000. And then the other picture here, this is the Daktronic style board. This is the bigger board. This stretches us from an 18-foot wide board out to a 25-foot wide board. Raises us up so to the bottom of the future digital display board, we're 25, or you can see that, 10 feet, and it's another, what, 2 feet? 3 feet?
Yeah, so Nate, here's 10, then the white part is 3, and then
So
8.
you're 13 feet to the bottom of the scoreboard. The current scoreboard in its location, in its form now, is probably less than 8 feet to the bottom of the board, with no potential to do any of this additional marketing, advertising underneath it because now it's down into your head.
So, Mr. Dickmeyer, I was approached by, I think, your other donor. He very clearly suggested to me, the issue is if you're contributing money, you want advertising space. It's just a natural, that's what donors expect if they're, putting up large amounts of money. So my thoughts on this is the lower, cost version, it seems pretty close to what the bigger one is. Obviously, it's a little larger. My question, you mentioned the space between that and concessions. Mount Mohabben, can we move the concessions back? Is that easier than moving our scoreboard? You're talking about an aged block building.
Oh, so yeah, your concession stand is the block voting, that's what
You were talking about putting money towards that though, correct?
you.
Or
Oh, no, the press box.
the press
Can't-
box?
can't- can't
Okay,
see
I
the
misunderstood
box.
that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I think the press box is probably due for paint. I should-
okay, okay.
That was just me, this is my personal observation, we didn't talk about.
Okay. But my inclination is, we go with the lesser cost option unless we're going to resolve to regularly sell that space down at the bottom of our board, which will be a revenue generator as we go further out. Once we've paid for our board, it will then become a cost. It'll sell for us. It's a question of whether the booster club's willing to manage that, space, the advertising space of that. Do you think they wouldn't mind doing that, or is,
Thank you for bringing that up.
okay?
I hesitated to bring that up.
Yeah. How you feeling, Craig?
That's kind of the elephant.
Because we need to understand that, right? We need to understand that.
For almost a year now, we've been talking about the scoreboard thing amongst the parents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there have been some parents and some community business owners that would probably have paid for the scoreboard a year ago.
Right.
Had they had their opportunity to put their name in it. I could have raised, I'm just throwing it out, probably $100,000 for this.
Right.
I could have sold 3 spots across the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Right, and that's exactly why I bring it up, because I think this is very easy to fund. If we are able to manage advertising space, we can fund this and be done with it. It's a question of who's gonna manage it and who's willing to. If whoever does take on that, the value that the district is getting, we get a much bigger board. And it comes down to, time and effort is what we get, right? So I will ask that. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, sir.
Right before he jumps in, at the last meeting that I attended, we gave the potential to put an LED display
Mhm.
across there rather than static.
Right,
So that it could be more interchangeable, so that when
Right.
we talk to whoever's going to manage that. And I think that was the biggest dilemma is who's gonna manage it, who's gonna be in charge of it? And concern is if you have a volunteer group in charge of that, you have a lot of turnover of volunteers. So will it be consistent?
and that would be my caveat. If we go with a hard swap out board, I would say we just manage it like, twice a season swap out. We're not talking a regular all the time weekly thing. If we're LED, we could change it at will, but if we're got to climb up there and do that, I would think we wouldn't want people to.
So
Move
just
forward.
as someone who actually just did this at her business, on a static poly at 3 feet by, it's 25 feet divided by 3, so it's not gonna be exact. That's $600 solely for the print going on what's there, minimum. So if you had a company come in twice and they're gonna pay to donate, or they're gonna pay to create their logo with Strickler or whomever, I mean, that's $800 on top of whatever they're paying for advertising fees. They are not going to want it to be switched out mid-season. There's no way.
My impression was the donor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
My impression was if the donor's getting that advertising space, they're willing to put the money into it, because they think they're getting a huge audience for their advertising dollar. And that was my impression from my conversation.
So your football season's how long?
10 weeks.
4 months. So are we saying the year is in the calendar year or the year is in a football season? Because, so 2 months
Yep.
of advertising is what we would be selling to these people.
But yeah,
So
that
it
field
wouldn't
gets
just
used for
be, that's my
different-
question. It wouldn't just be,
I think this was the first year they didn't practice on their own field for a game all season. Because I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, pointing out, there's other sports that.
No, you probably have a great feel on, how much exposure it gets. So, I mean, do you think it gets that, your boosters, do they think they're getting a great value?
So, I thank you for letting me. Be here today. Craig Graham, by the way. Yeah, sorry, I better. So I took over about 3 months ago, strong-armed or not. I'm excited because I like working with the kids. I've been coaching for years. This was kind of a way for me to say, I'm getting out, because I have an 8th grader and a sophomore, so I want to sit and watch. So I can still find ways to contribute. So to answer your question quickly, there's a lot of moving parts that the vice president, myself, and the rest of the board for that matter, Brian Watson and Mary Ann Taylor. And Brian just told me yesterday he's going to step aside now that his daughter's a senior. She's moving on, so he's moving on. So anyhow, we talked at length yesterday, knowing this day was coming today. We didn't really have an answer for Kevin yet, but we wanted to have one. Our dilemma right now is there's the communication, and I'm not sure how the boosters are really athletic boosters are supposed to be run, and understanding the needs of all the children, not just football, not just soccer, and so forth. So, and this is a perfect example. We want to be able to provide that. I'm a numbers guy, I'm an engineering kind of guy, I'm a football guy as well. So you put the two together, and I'm passionate about what I do, but I need answers. I need somewhat structure, right? How much money is going to be coming in? How much can we provide for what sport? I've been talking to Troy as often as I can, and we're trying to get that relationship really ironed out to understand what the coaches need and when they tell us that. So I know what's coming in and what needs to come out. Because I couldn't tell him how much, based off what we currently have right now, we can, provide to them. I'd love to give it all, right? It's a great idea. Especially with this new building, the exposure, I forget the word you use, but it presents well, right? Especially with what that was beautiful what we saw there. I took a bunch of notes and things that I would do. Anyhow, I love options. So what Debbie Dickmeyer is our vice president. Her and I took over at the same time. We sat down and took a lot of notes yesterday that we would like to raise questions, and I'm not going to do that here tonight because we just put it out there. We'd like to be able to put some things in front of the board, questions about advertising, because that seemed to be some of the things that were the roadblock. And whether the boosters actually helped do that or not, that was a roadblock that we saw if we wanted to get out to the community and say, hey, can you help us? I sat next to our alumni, Mr. Booker.
Pat Loss.
What's her name?
Pat Loss.
Yeah, and we talked for a little bit the other night, and she goes, yeah, we just need to talk. And so it just seems to be that there's lots of opportunity, but there's some missed opportunity because we're not all doing the same thing at the same time. Not that you guys, hey, boosters, you go off and do what you do, and if that's the answer, then that's great. But to your point, if we want to do some of that, we need to figure out what guidelines there are, how can we operate. The advertising seemed to be the biggest roadblock for not only the scoreboard, but even what we wanted to try to do different in the future. One thing that we wanted to reintroduce is the scholarship for female and male athletes. Yes, it's athletes because it's athletic boosters, but again, just something to help get it out there because I had no idea who the boosters were, and I've been coaching for almost 8-9 years now. So yeah, I had no idea what the boosters did. So I'd like to change that. I would like to make sure folks understand who the boosters are, athletic, and what we're there to provide, change our mission statement if we had to, do whatever, and then help be able to position ourselves to work with whatever groups, whether it's the board, Mr. Osborne, to accomplish whatever we need to accomplish. And the only way to do that is to understand what the needs are, and then we understand what we need to either currently have coming in or what we need to have coming in, and then see if we can meet that. And then if we can't, does that make sense? So I know it's kind of long-winded, but I can't just simply say, yes, let's go without understanding where we fit in.
So we're basically discussing here that as the board, there's a policy, right, that says that we do not allow this.
Yep.
Just so
The policy hasn't been touched since 2004, so it's woefully outdated. So I did a little research from some of our neighboring schools. And there are some things that I think, working with the solicitor, the board would pursue that. They put some guidelines in place. For example, no advertising will be allowed which promotes hostilities, disorder, violence, attacks groups based on discriminatory bias, is libelous, defamatory, obscene, lewd, vulgar, profane, invades the rights of private. It goes on and on and on. And then it talks about where appropriate media and venues for advertising may include. And one of the options clearly is athletic facilities. So there are some guidelines that the board could charge the solicitor with reviewing a couple different policies. And the one I looked at, I know is a school that is also represented by our solicitor. So if you were to go down this road, obviously, if you charge us with coming up with a policy and working with the solicitor, you could probably have it for initial review, I would imagine, at the first meeting in March. So you could potentially have an advertising policy that you could put forward to organizations within the community sometime in April.
So just as a follow-up to that, and this doesn't have anything to do with athletics, but we currently don't allow these types of things in our buildings either.
Correct.
So like if, for instance, a local orthodontist wanted to send flyers out, if we change this policy, are we opening up ourselves to those types of
No,
things?
no. That's different because that's distribution.
Okay,
And that is clearly, we do not permit that unless it's a school affiliate, a school organized event. What you could have based on the policy I'm looking at is you might have someone say, I'd like to put a patch on your girls' basketball team advertising. And that would be, because example, appropriate media and venues for advertising could include banners and signs, athletic or other uniforms, student publications, television, athletic facilities, district level projects such as the high school renovation, community education advertising, which I know we run a welding program for adults, and district level activities at state tournaments. So it does not, and it wouldn't, and I would strongly recommend that we would not include advertising to include passing out to students in the classroom that is not a district organized or district operated organization.
thank you.
This is probably going to come up with the renovation of the basketball, of the gymnasium also.
In terms of signage,
Signage
Yeah.
and just the scoreboard there, because we're changing the way the floor is oriented. But for, at least for the main, for the competitions. I guess, Nate, we've been making the scoreboard we have work. We're finally going to get visiting bleachers done. Maybe July, right?
Correct.
And there's on the list of things to do is to renovate the actual stadium, which has probably been on the list since I've joined the board. So we've been kicking that forward a good bit. I guess as making this part of that and part of some of these other things, if we could get some of this other stuff worked out, is there potential to make the scoreboard work for another season if we don't, I mean, because I feel like or we have to do this now, I guess, or what?
So that was the sidebar conversation. If we go to the extent of going with a larger format where it requires permitting, engineering, new structure, ordering that, getting it installed by outside crews, that's the type of thing we'd have to start sooner rather than later if we want it in place by football season. If the district was to choose to go with a similar size board that the district staff, maintenance staff is hanging on the existing structure, well, varsity sports has a couple week turnaround on scoreboards. We can punt that one down the road, order that probably in May and have it in June, the way it sounds, and put it up in July. So it really comes down to, do we need it for football season? At this point, the old board works. It's getting pretty daggone old. It's not an emergency until it doesn't work. It's the problem.
Well, yeah, I guess just listening to that, is a potential, that we could just work on the foundation work. And if we had to order one because we got in a pinch, we could and put it up if we got, our back against the wall. But it sounds like most everybody would like to investigate at least what we're doing. you
So-
know, with the potential of doing something like this, plus what are we gonna do? I mean, are we just gonna hang, you know, I'd imagine they're gonna be something similar to like, York Tech put up that can put advertisements and other things on the boards in the gymnasium.
So my original goal, when Kevin and I started discussing this, was that we would pursue more of a standard board and we wouldn't be addressing the advertising aspect at the bottom, but we'd be putting up a structure and a board that's big enough to add that once the board has time to thoroughly flush that out. There's no reason we still can't pursue that. Our only shortcoming is that the funding didn't quite get to where our original proposal was. You know, to do that with the original Strickler proposal was $75,000, which
Mhm.
we basically only have $35,000 towards it. So if the board wanted to act on that with the idea that, hey, we're spending a little bit more than what the board originally had planned for this project, but there is avenues to embrace advertising, embrace ways to recoup that money, and we're acknowledging that we're going to dive into that and address it as a board as soon as we reasonably can, but we don't want to hold up the scoreboard. I propose that's a route. But, you know, if that's a direction we want to take as the school district, we just kind of,
Does that impact the space that we're allowing for the advertising?
well, that's the foresight that we have to have. How much advertising do we want? How much,
Right.
how much do we want to oversize this board and this structure to support advertising? If in fact the board does not want to support advertising and is going to go the other direction, I'm not sure why we wouldn't just hang the $18,000 board on the structure we have. But if this board thinks that in a day not too far away, whether it's this year, next year, or 4 years from now, for that matter, that there will be avenue for private advertising on district sporting events. I think it would be prudent at this point for the board to say, okay, let's go ahead and put a structure in that will support that with the idea that that's what our long-term vision is. And it's just a matter of how long a term is it? Is that a 9-month process? Is that a 2-year process, or is that a 4-year process till we get to where we have a manageable advertising program?
So I would put to the board, I think it behooves us to either go with the simplest option, which incurs a taxpayer savings, or, which I think is long-term, I think we could iron out the policy points to space-specific advertising. We're not making it bigger than our boards to detract from the game, but we are allowed to sell space. I think that it gives us the ability to not make the taxpayer pay for our stuff. For a change, we can sell space competitively, which will ultimately result in a revenue generator, which is always good when we can run something that generates revenue. And two, it would be competitive. So we would have businesses competing for that space. I see, and it would simplify from the athletic booster part. If this becomes a revenue generator, you don't have to go out to businesses and say, "Hey, we would like to fundraise for uniforms or whatever." Your scoreboard is doing that to some extent, right? So you can then take that money that the scoreboard's generating and fund it to wherever the needs are of the athletic club. So we have that added benefit. I personally, from my viewpoint, I say we sell space, provided that it's not overwhelming, be it in our gymnasiums or on our school boards. If we have a limited space that we sell advertising space on for the local businesses that are reputable, that aren't gonna interject anything objectionable, just advertiser, I think it's a win. I really do. That's my opinion on it, but
One little bit to
yes,
add.
sir.
Well, actually, two things. So backing up to the pricing of this for Strickler, I think it would benefit if we could get a price from Varsity Signs on a larger one, more of this size.
Mhm.
They have a 28-foot, it's not much more expensive than the 20-foot, and then see if we can find, I did a little research through a contact I had through that I do billboards with, to see if they would install something like this and maybe not. So if we could find a contractor other than Strickland, maybe if we bought a varsity board and got someone local, or maybe even a donation from a local contractor who's alum here, maybe to have to get someone to engineer it, but they could put the posts up for it, possibly save some funds that way. And I wanted to comment that I do believe the Booster Club is willing to kick some funds in somewhere in the $5,000 to $10,000 range just from the meetings that they had. Gets us into the 45,000 range, possibly. And with the varsity sign, might get us back on the Grassy area.
And again, to help you out, if we can telegraph we're going to go down the route of advertising, then I think that instantly helps you guys out in your fundraising, doesn't it?
And the thing you have to think about is, so if the Booster Club's running that, do they keep the income from that, or does that come back to the school district? Those are just things to think about. The other thought process is on static signs. I believe what you're talking about, Ms. Weaver, it would be more like a 1 year or even a 2 year on the static part. Whereas, and that's up, people can see that when they're walking the track, 360 days out of the year. The static is a less expensive way to get advertising up there, and maybe sell 3 or even 4 spots. If you go with LED, that's only on during games or band competitions and things like that. So, and that costs a lot more to put the LED up, but it's very modern. It's what a lot of schools are doing. I don't care either way. It's just the options.
Good considerations. Thank you.
So I can do that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
He's more of a businessman. Yes, it sounds cool to control that kind of money. That's not a stipulation, obviously. What I said earlier is simply knowing what the revenue stream is between all the different options that we have. So then when we need to solve something, whether it's the bleachers or painting or whatever, then we know what we need to do extra. Go to Giovanni's, for
Right.
a couple dollars a night, when everybody goes out. Okay, we get a couple hundred. That might be for our, what I said earlier about reinstating the scholarships, but that's not going to be enough for something like this. So simply understanding what that revenue stream is, and then where we need to make up, whether it's small or large, and then we start going from there. And I personally think that would make some of our meetings a lot more entertaining. I want to use the word entertaining because my first one was 15 minutes. I think, okay, this is borderline. So I made the next one almost an hour. And then, of course, Kevin came and presented the scoreboard. So that gave me an hour. So I felt that was a win. But again, we're trying to accomplish stuff, not just simply do it for the hour. Second thing I want to talk, when you look at that policy, the one question that I will bring up that Debbie and I agreed we weren't going to talk until we had a chance to present to the board properly is the advertising that goes with the, I think the varsity club makes the program. The program.
Yeah.
So that, and I'm not complaining about it. I think my wife's actually. So, but I mean, what's the difference there with that? And then how do we make sure there's no conflict there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would just be I would consider that to be a district level publication. And I think it would be similar to the same standards, if you will. And because it is it's no different than when we do it for our plays. You can advertise, but that's, you buy it and then you go and it's disposed. Where the pricing for this would be, as you point out, it would be games. It would be when you drive by, if you drive by, you'll see it. A lot of people walk our track. Kids see it when they're there. They can go home and talk about it. There's just a whole host of things. I would see one as more permanent and one as more temporary. And I think the cost to print a page is very different than the cost. And those dollars, because they're district publications, for example, the play, that goes back to help defray the cost of the play. So I would think that if this was a district board, the cost would go back to the district to help. If it becomes a revenue generator, it's to paint the press box. It's to contribute, recondition the helmets, new goals for the field hockey. Obviously there's another scoreboard over there that would need repairs eventually. So that would be would almost become a different account, Mr. Mummer. Would you agree?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, yeah, the only reason I mentioned is just taking into consideration when we're putting that policy together.
Sure.
Because people are gonna ask. Sure. And they're gonna go, well, geez, why is so-and-so on there, on that? And then and the process is different for getting on that board.
A couple thoughts. If we're looking strictly from a taxpayer standpoint, we go with the cheapest option. The cheapest option, we don't have to do anything structurally. we satisfy the lowest cost in terms of the effect on the taxpayer. However, that doesn't suffice many of the clubs and the people that are putting forth a lot of effort to consider larger and bigger. If we consider advertising at all, the existing structure support is out completely. So we have to at least go to that minimum level immediately because advertising is going to be larger. Larger is going to involve an engineer. It's going to involve all of that work, footer work and concrete work. So the question for me in this whole decision is, do we now have to act quickly for next football season? Or do we look at this whole picture from an administration and a board standpoint, whether we want to open the door for advertising? And if we do, then we work with these two fine gentlemen and their organizations that will help support that and put up the best possible thing that we can. But the question is, it's timeline. We have to make a decision whether we want advertising or whether just putting something up for next football season is the answer at a low cost to the taxpayer.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and sort of with the advertisement part first and kind of put everything else a little bit on the back burner. Because this is again, wrestling, basketball. We're gonna have the same opportunity in the gym, volleyball, in the gymnasium with scoreboards there and advertise, you know what I mean? So they're gonna go hand in hand.
Would you do that? I'm sorry.
Well, it's a couple years
Would you do
till
that?
it happens, but it's actually gonna be voted on in about 3 months, once the bids come in. You know what I mean? In other words, so it's gonna be happening quicker actually than maybe the scoreboard in a sense of the way it's happening. But
So some things I wanted to throw out just for consideration. I don't know advertising. I don't know what advertising dollars cost. I don't know what the potential of this board to bring income in is. I have no idea. But I would just like to throw out that by embracing advertising and doing a structure big enough to do it, we're automatically signing on to, I propose at least a $25,000 charge just to build a structure to support the advertising. And then the static boards price in at, when I say a static board, it's just vinyl lettering or whatever. You're probably talking in the neighborhood of $7,000 to $10,000, depending on the configuration and what we do there. And if we actually seriously entertaining a digital display, now we're jumping to the $30,000 range. So that's the questions I'm asking in my brain is, okay, so we start asking for local contractors to volunteer materials, effort, time. Do we end up having all of our advertising spoken for 10 years before we're even done with the board? Just to get the pledges to get it up? Does the income and the expense, do they balance out? Wes, I don't know.
Thank you. So, my good friends, Thomas Pizza in Gettysburg, and Gettysburg about 8 years ago, redid their football stadium. And so they had 4 anchor partners, Tommy's Pizza, Wellspan, and I forget who the other 2 local businesses were. So they all paid, and this was 8 years ago, they all paid $10,000 each for a lifetime static anchor partner. And then you could have the anchor partners on the side, so there's maybe 40 grand, and then you could run your digital board below, which is revolving, and then it's always changing, so you could always put new people up and the businesses up to help with that kind of revenue generation. So if you look at an approach where you take some anchor partners, again, 8 years ago, businesses paid $10,000 each for a lifetime commitment. And then you had your digital display running underneath. You can interchange that each season or each year, and that continues to create more generate more revenue. I just wanted to share that. I texted my friend while we were here saying, how much did you guys pay to put on the scoreboard at Gettysburg? He said they all paid $10,000 each, and that was about 8 years ago.
Does the administration have a concern about opening this door for advertising?
No, I don't think there's a concern. I guess if I do have a concern, we have a facilities department that is, they're outstanding. There's no question. We've talked about that a lot in a maintenance team. Everybody in the district does a great job. I don't know how much more they could take. you know, and I don't think this is gonna add a whole lot of stress once it's up. Probably no more than what there's there now. But I do think if we're gonna start running that advertisement through Jade in Nate's office, or I don't know where that's gonna be run. I think when you look down the road, this board has always been, long before I got here, and I know long after I'm gone. I'm not going anywhere, so don't read into that. Every time I say something like that, they're like, "Are you leaving?" No, I'm not leaving. The point becomes, I think we have to take a look at this policy, because whatever board goes up is going to be there for 20 years. And so I think that's the issue that we have to address now, and I think Mr. Plessick addressed it beautifully. We're talking about 2 or 3 years before that high school gym's done, but in 3 months, we have to decide what that gym's going to be. And so I think that's the same thing we have to address here. I do think, to a lot of the board members' points, I think it would be irresponsible if we didn't look at advertising to help defray the cost to taxpayers. The tricky part becomes, what does that advertising become? Because you can, what happens if you have a business, I'll use Tommy's. What if Tommy sells and goes out of business? You know, they say, I'm done with this. Well, I don't say go out, but they sell. So does that lifetime commitment end? Right? So there's a contract. And what are we going to do about the contract? Anchors are great and rotating. I think if you're going to do it, you do it something like that. It's static. It's a certain term, 5 years. It's managed for that 5 years. You got your fee, and that you're not constantly saying, hey, Nate, would you like to advertise this year? Because if you do, it's X, Y, and Z. Who's going to manage that? I think if we do advertising, excuse me, it should be static. It should be for a defined term, and it shouldn't be, and everybody on that term comes to a close at the same time. But I do think, from my perspective, we've got to look at our advertising policy, because I think we owe that to our district and our taxpayers if we're going to be doing things like this. And then we owe it to our businesses, because that's, they're great partners. And if it's an opportunity to put their name in front of a public, not always ours, people who, we play school districts that solicit some of the businesses around us. I think it's a good opportunity.
And if I can add to that, to answer your question, Jay, I don't think concern, because I think it's an opportunity as well, that having the policies we've had may have presented some barriers in the past to maybe some different opportunities. But I'm familiar with other districts who have gone down this road, and just in order to do it, I mean, you're talking. I can speak to one district in this county that's more in my neck of the woods where I live. They went down this road about 10 years ago. They have a marketing director. That's a position in their district who does all of their community partnerships, marketing. I know the district I live in does not have that position, but they started going down that road. They contract with a marketing firm to manage all that. So kind of to Jay's point, those, not to say we would need to do that, but who is that going to fall on? If you're going to I agree with whoever made the comment earlier about if that falls to a voluntary organization that has a lot of turnover year in, year out, that can get a little messy. So it's not something you do overnight. I think you got to really look at those policies. We got to develop them. We got to see how other districts manage advertising. I agree. If you're going to have a standard, we're only going to do it, allow reputable, upstanding local businesses. Who determines that? What's upstanding to one person might not be upstanding to another. Where are the standards going to be? So it's not a concern. It's just, if we're going to go down this road, we need to do it the right way, would be my concern.
And to Dr. Hartman's point, I agree with him. Per the policy I'm looking at, every advertiser is approved by the board. So it's not, you can have an organization solicit on the board's behalf, but that organization that agrees to advertise is approved by this body. So you would control who would be up on that board and who wouldn't be.
That's why you go along what you're suggesting, is you make it a more static thing that's not as revolving, to simplify the whole process, right? I mean, that way we have like a annual, semi-annual review of our 3 or 4 spots on our board, and that keeps it very simple, and there's no back and forth. It's just once or twice and done, and it still generates revenue. And I still think that space is gonna be competitive, I still think, and I don't like the idea of a 5-year. I think, because, yeah, I get it, you're just throwing out, but even if it's 2 or 3, they're gonna be competing for that space. I think it's gonna generate a lot of revenue for athletic clubs. So getting back to Mr. Dickmeyer's point, we could go with a varsity board that's big enough that still incurs a cost saving right now, but allows that static anchor space underneath without a change in footprint. Do I have that right?
We can't do that because we don't, if we go with the cheaper version and look at the advertising, we don't have the height to be
Oh,
able to
right.
put that underneath
Okay.
of there for any type of advertising. So if we are going to go down the road of pursuing or at least exploring advertising, option one is pretty much off the table.
Gotcha.
Because we have to either more footers, more engineering, replacement closer to the concession stand or back that area. So the real question today is, do we need to act on this now in terms of, from a taxpayer standpoint, of the lesser amount? Or do we want to open the door for exploring this? And if we open that door, then there is a delay and the football team will have to deal with the existing scoreboard next season.
Nate, how old's the scoreboard on the field hockey field? Yeah. So that's a new sign. or a
So
new board.
that's
Okay,
a
never
newer
mind.
sign, correct.
I was gonna say, if that was a 25-year-old sign and needing replaced soon, could you go with the $20,000 one for the football stadium now? And if 3 or 4 years down the road, an opportunity for fundraising exists, move that to that won't work. If
I
that's a new
mean,
sign.
still, what you said already is that this board we have now is functional. We need to look at replacing it, but it's working for us now. So we could develop our policy.
We have a functional board
Right.
now that's probably 30+ years old. It's just, we're getting to the point where we're
Right.
not
And I'm not
So-
suggesting
Some
we
years
won't.
when we fired up the beginning of the season, we'll fire up a week in advance, and sometimes everything lights up, and sometimes it doesn't. We gotta go out and clean connections and bulbs, but, it's just getting to that time in its life cycle. We need to seriously consider it. As I shared with Rich, it's not an emergency till the day it doesn't come
Right.
back to life after we hit the side of the box. but-
Well, yeah, I guess we'll work on the policy and then see what we'll go from there. At this point, I think we just, you know what I mean? I don't think we're purchasing or going forward with any scoreboard just yet. I mean, I know we talked a lot about the advertisement and everything. I'm not really for that. I want the bigger board, I want it in the grass, and I want the option to put the electronic signs underneath it for our purposes. Same with the thing. I want to advertise our stuff. I want to put the thon up. I want to do, you know what I mean? I want it to be school-based. I'm not looking to get Coca-Cola or anyone else up there. You know what I mean? And that's just my personal take. But I like the option of being able to add to it, and I do like the idea of a bigger board that's moved back away from that area right off the track. So that's it, but we can kind of save, I guess, really, if we want to hash out I'm not sure, we can just make that part of a meeting maybe
I was going to
coming
say,
up.
can I don't know if I could do this. Can I make a motion that at our planning meeting for March, we discuss the advertising in the school district policy? How does that work? How do we bring this policy up and get it in the light to be talked about? How do we do this?
We would just need to contact Stock and Leader and have them look into the current policies and what would need to be changed in order to, let's say, accomplish advertisement or allow advertisement. That can be done easily enough. I think to what Rich said and what Jay said, I think what we're looking for, in my opinion, would be the movement of the board back to the grass. That, I think, is the first step. And once we have that in our plan as our mind, then we determine, do we want the 25-foot board or do we want the 28-foot board, the bigger, more expensive? In my mind, we start with the base of it first. Once we have that in our minds is where we want to go, then we can go further ahead with the board itself. But we need to get.
Lay the groundwork.
Thank
Literally,
you.
lay the groundwork.
We need to lay the groundwork and get started on that part of it before we can go into, and because of the fact this scoreboard is 30+ years old, and it may or may not work in the fall, yeah, it's an item that does need to be addressed, but fingers crossed, toes crossed and everything else, hopefully it'll work this fall. And it'll give us a little bit more time to see where we actually need to get to in order to afford what we really want. That's my go.
I guess I'm confused, because what we're saying is, if we're looking as to whether or not we're moving it to the grass or we're not moving it to the grass, we have $20,000 budgeted for this with an additional potential donation. If we move it to the grass, we do not have the money as it stands to do so right now.
So that was actually my question. I just wanted to ask Mr. Dickmeyer, in your time within the community, as you've been pledging, going and seeking out donors, had anyone said, I will give you this money? And then when you said, I'm sorry, there's no advertising opportunity, did they then retract? Is there anyone, I guess, on our B list now that we could potentially contact with a very solid, oh, I'll give you 5 or 10K with that advertising opportunity?
So I didn't have anybody that retracted anything, but I had many that said, if there was advertising, I'd write that check today.
Okay.
And thank you for listening to all this. I'm sorry that I opened up a big can of worms, but I'm actually not sorry, because I'm really happy with the dialogue that occurred tonight, I really am. And Mr. Blessing, what you said is exactly what I'm feeling from the community members, and Suzelle, it's same with you. The community members are saying to me, why doesn't our school district allow this? I want to give more, but I just want some recognition. That's really all they're asking for. They don't want to plaster their name all over the world. They just want to be recognized for it. Thank you. Did I answer your question, Luana? I think there are some folks, even without advertising, if we were really close, I think there's a couple of people I could call, and if I said, hey, I'm just 5,000 short, I could probably get somebody to agree.
Because I think if we kick in your 15K already pledged,
Yep.
and our 20, and then we go back to those who were on the fence, once we review our policy, that 45 isn't far away.
Right.
Yeah.
With advertising, I said earlier, I think I can probably get 100,000. You know, and I like your idea of let's just keep it to a 1 or 2 year contract. I firmly believe the school district will need to match that. As much as I love the booster club and have that turnover of volunteers, I think that would be really too difficult to ask. I see it on coaches youth level. I see just with changeover and coaches alone, to get different ideas and thought processes. So, and I was just curious, Dr. Hartman, do you have an idea how much that school district raises from with that?
I'd be spitballing if I gave a number. I don't know. The district I was referencing, they've really dived into the marketing and advertising. They're naming science labs after businesses. They're and I'm not joking. You walk through the hallways of their school, there's plaques outside. This lab is the, Aquafina. I'm just making that up because it's a local business, but so who knows? I mean,
With your new school, I was actually on some building committees in the Lineborough area of our church and our fire department. And by putting a plaque outside with a donator's name on it, you can get somebody's recognized for donating for that particular room. They get some pretty big chunks of money for that. So maybe with the new school, your policy could take a look at that, and maybe your media center, I don't know, just.
that's the thing. You can really, without those policies and those parameters of what our guidelines are, is you end up having to, People's Bank cafeteria. Do we want that as an organization? I don't know.
No. Right.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm along the line with Rich in this perspective that I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we're shortchanging the district if we just go with option A. It's a short gap solution. We need to look further down the road. I'm not sure I want the advertising, but I like the option of at least where the scoreboard is a problem. It's been a problem for a long time in terms of people flow, safety. At the very least, it should be moved over to the grass. So I'm open to delaying this a little bit and making the best decision possible, whether it is advertising or option 2.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to pull all this together real quick and say that, first of all, um, Dr. Burkhardt, if you could reach out to Stockton Leader,
Mhm.
follow up with the policies of what maybe need to be changed or adjusted or added. Go to Nate and see what we need as far as getting that base plan put together for moving the scoreboard back to the grass. Giving you the okay to go ahead and do that.
So there's a little bit of catch-22 involved with that because your base is going to be dependent on, for lack of a better word, your sale area. So the
Okay.
more square footage we hang up there and the higher we hang it, the bigger the base gets and it gets exponentially bigger.
Sure.
So there's a big difference between having, a 400 square foot sign and a 600 square foot sign. And then it's another big jump if it's 10 feet off the ground or 14 feet off the ground. So unfortunately, I think it really is going to need to come together as a package.
Okay.
It's going to be tough to design a base and put that ball in motion without knowing how big the sign's going to be and how high the sign needs to be.
Well, to go with that in mind, a scoreboard similar in size to what we have, maybe a little bit bigger, higher off the ground, giving it the ability to put advertisement, let's say electronic advertisement on the bottom. See where that comes out. If there's multiple sizes, is there a 25 foot? Is there a 20 foot? I think maybe if we could get multiple ideas or prices in those areas, it gives us something to look at, to consider.
Okay.
I don't know if it's 23 feet or is it 27 feet, some kind of compromise, a little larger than what we've got, but we don't want to cover the whole end of the football field with it.
So, and you'd like to see options that incorporate future revisions for a digital display panel also?
How about just one static, one electronic, right? To just cover our options here? Because we haven't discussed, we need a full discussion on our advertising, right? So if we just ask you to, even though you've given us a lot of great options here, you've already put your work in. Even if you were to give us 2 options of what we could go to, so we're planned and ready to go there, right?
Wouldn't your electrical plans completely change though, depending on whether you would be
Just
running?
the width of the footers, basically, right?
Well, the fortunate part about the LED stuff, it's relatively low amperage. It
Okay.
doesn't draw a whole lot. If it's a
Okay.
digital display board, it's an extra circuit. But if we were going to dig a ditch and run a conduit over to the primary board, we would just run an extra
Right, but
conduit.
the lit
just-
boards are
just-
gonna weigh a lot more. I know LEDs don't weigh a ton, but there's no way that a static poly board is gonna have the same weight as a lit board with
So
wiring.
our governing forces are the wind is more so than the weight.
Okay,
Your boards, regardless of what size they are, aren't terribly heavy.
okay.
As far as downward weight, it's when we get 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts, we want to make sure
I just
it
feel like you're
stays
gonna
where it's
have like
at.
56 choose your own adventures for us by the time you're done trying to mock all this up. It just seems like a huge umbrella that we're asking you to cast when we don't have much guidance right now.
Yeah.
I just don't want to waste your time.
So what I'm thinking, and just to throw out for the board to, I think the board that we have up on the display now, to me, is a good starting point. If we want to embrace advertising, we have the basic board, we have the truss on top. I think we all agree that's a nice sharp look for the district, I think. The bottom 3 panels, whether those are static displays or whether they're LED displays or a combination of static and LED, doesn't change the wind loading if we agree that that seems to be decent
Good.
proportions and something we can work with. And, if that is satisfactory to the board, that gives me something to work with.
But if we don't agree to advertising, because there's obviously board members missing, and if it goes down, then there's no budget for this.
You just lose the lower half.
We
We
just-
just still have the footers in the same spot.
But it was still a $75,000 sign.
No,
This is the deck. Oh, this was
No.
the other brand.
this is the other one. The
Okay,
mid-range.
This,
so we
this
still-
is, this is actually,
It's
this
still gonna
actually
be
is the
50 then.
$75,000 install board.
Oh, that's what I
But
thought.
if
Okay.
we go to, potentially, if we go with varsity scoreboards, their boards seem to be more
Reasonable.
economically priced. So less expensive. We can price it multiple ways with them, just the same as we did with the Daktronic style board. And if the board, school board chooses not to go down the route of advertising, those 3 white panels we see on that board would just not be there. We would have built a little bigger foundation of what we actually needed, but we would always have that option in the future.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. Could always be added. That sounds, yeah, that, from what Matt just said and from what's been discussed with him, I think that gives us the
Flexibility.
necessary flexibility to move forward in the next, to whatever, 2-3 years it needs.
And Amanda, at the very least, it'll put it at a better location at a higher level with better visibility for everybody in the stadium.
Yeah, my only concern is if we cut the advertising, if the board disagrees with the advertising, then you potentially still don't have the money to install this sign unless the board is budgeting more than 20, because he's right. I mean, if we say no advertising, some of those dollars are going to disappear and we need to be prepared for that. So if we quote this out and lay the footing and get the cost, and then the board says, we're not going to advertise, then we're back to where we are right now.
Well, we have money in our capital fund. It's just that what I budgeted, when I looked at the existing board that I know was on the way out, if I have to replace this board, 20 is what I budgeted. That's what I presented as a project budget to the board. But if it's the board's desire to expand upon that, and even if we don't want to embrace advertising, but the additional $25,000 on top of the price of the board is worth it to the board just to get it moved back away from the field, just to get it higher, just to get it new and fresh in a fresh, exciting new location. That's fine. It's just a little bigger chunk we're pulling out of the capital reserve fund.
And if we go with it inexpensive, like the varsity, who's more inexpensive as far as scoreboards, and we've moved it back and up, do we have a pricing for what it would cost varsity to put in like what they quoted us at the 18,000 at just the higher height back further?
No, I did not price that from varsity because their thing is direct from factory sales. I'm not sure if
Okay.
they'll do install. Part of what kept that price so economical was our crews being able to go
I
out
got you.
and
Okay.
hang the board.
I got you. Okay.
And, it's just working within the parameters of what we
gotcha.
already have. So it just kind of opens up a
Okay.
fresh can of worms to go to a new
Sorry.
structure.
Okay.
Your input was very helpful this evening. Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
And
Yes.
as well as your efforts to try to support it.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to do it. Just, I'm not to be devil's advocate, but I did hear earlier we saved 25 grand on some aluminum bleachers. So.
Well done.
Well, it wasn't quite 25, but I
Jeff
knew that
Jeff
would
mocked
come
me
up.
back to 15.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, guys. I didn't expect it.
It's always.
Oh, that's all right, thank you.
Let's move on to the-
Municipal bid results we received back this afternoon. The highest bid, the only bid received for chair lots 1, 2, and 3 were $10 apiece. No bid for lot 4. Student desk, there was no bid. And sprinkler hose, we received a $50 bid. So as long as that is satisfactory to the board, I'd ask for the motion to approve those publicly advertised products and bids we received, and also the permission to just dispose of the best way we can of the stuff that we did not receive any bids on.
I'll move that we accept the bids as presented.
I think you was.
I'd like
Yeah.
tonight and move it on because these guys have problems
I'll
showing up
move.
sometimes.
I'll
I
second.
make a motion that we accept the bids.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? I know I kind of took off the, give us a roll call vote.
Mr. Galzella,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Shinks,
Yes.
Mr. Klausby. Restroom. Mr. Mummert. 5 yes, 0 no.
And then just for clarity, I have the board's approval to dispose of the stuff that we didn't receive bids on the best way we can, whether it's recycle, give it away, throw it in the dumpster, whatever's the most economical.
Up to $10.
So I have one item for other. It's a copy of a letter in front of each of the board members. It was addressed to me, it was in my mailbox, but when I opened it, it said to Dear School Board. So that's why I made copies and distributed. I believe it to be a high school student that probably through a lit class or whatever. Middle school, okay.
It's a 8th grade English language arts project where the children are to write a persuasive letter to an administrator or community member or politician with something they think would benefit.
So it's very well written for an 8th grader. So the nature of it, I'll let the board take it home and study it, is about considering solar panels for the school district. If it so pleases the board, I will respond to this student that, it is always our goal to make prudent, wise choices as far as energy expenses for the school district. Solar panels is something I revisit from time to time. It's an ever-changing thing here lately as far as costs and paybacks. But my message to the students at this point is that I've yet to see a plan that is really economically feasible for a school district. A lot of the school solar panels that have been installed in recent years were made feasible by tax credits and government incentives. When you're a public school district and you don't pay taxes, tax incentives don't help you much. So while it might change in the future, at this point in time, I've not seen or been made aware of a good solar business plan that really worked well for the school district.
I have in my hands a letter that was received from the Hanover Area Fire and Rescue, directed to Mr. Furman, but it would be to the board. On behalf of the Hanover Area Fire and Rescue, I'd like to thank you for your generous contribution. Your financial support helps us continue in our mission to assist those in our community. Generous support of organizations like yours makes it possible for our organizations to exist and make the community a great place to live. Thank you for your support. Signed by Rebecca Hanshaw. And I'll give that to you, Jeff, and you can file it. That was the only other thing I had.
That was the other. Does any of the visitors have any last comments they would like to make? No. All right. In that, can I get a motion to?
Second.
All right. Done.
Fourth.
Careful going home, everyone. Keep this.